We spoke about the need for the Toronto Blue Jays to add a relief pitcher by this year's deadline, with Jordan Romano being sidelined for at least 2 weeks, and it could be even longer. So who knows on that front? But the Blue Jays do need some much needed power in that lineup, and they need a corner outfielder to add to that lineup. So we'll break down a couple of potential options and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and a couple of reports have surfaced that the Jays are interested in Lane Thomas, Tommy Pham, a numerous amount of corner outfielders that could potentially fill that void of power and just much needed run production in that lineup. But Nick, this has been a very interesting time for the Blue Jays. They have yet to make a significant move at this year's deadline, apart from maybe Genesis Cabrera, if you want to count that as a deadline move. But the Jays have been very active. They've been making a lot of phone calls. They've been kicking the tires on a lot of different players from selling teams. And something is coming. Something has been brewing for the past couple of days. And I just can't wait till that Passan bomb or that John Heyman bomb or whatever bomb comes through our way.
Yeah, it just seems like a matter of time until a big trade happens, whether it's the Blue Jays or around the MLB. Obviously, today the Max Scherzer trade kind of happened, which is kind of a big one. And the Blue Jays, some reports are coming out. We'll break those down before we do. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. I think we're 30 subs away now from 7,500, which is a major milestone. So thank you guys for that. But let's just get into the report here. And this was from John Morrissey. He went on MLB TV and said Lane Thomas is a name to keep an eye on with the Blue Jays. And we'll discuss some other reports as well as go over a couple of mock trades that were done up by some MLB writers. But before we get into that, Peter, what are your thoughts on Lane Thomas? We haven't really had a video dedicated to him. We talked about him on our live stream yesterday a little bit. I'll get up his savant in a second here. But Lane Thomas is a guy who's having a breakout year. However, this is kind of the first year that he's been really, really good, and his next, advanced stats aren't the best. So, do you think it would be a risk worth taking if you were the Toronto Blue Jays, given Dalton Varsho's extreme struggles at the dish this year?
I mean, yeah, he's not the greatest defender in the outfield. He doesn't have a tremendous versatility. He's not the greatest base runner either, but he is someone that has been mashing lefties this season and has been doing a pretty good job of that over the course of his career. Yes, the track record may not be there, but he's still having a phenomenal season and is someone that could inject a bit of life into this Blue Jays lineup. I know they've been good in the past couple of games, but the overall theme this season has been their lack of being able to drive in runs, their lack of power up and down that lineup 1 through 9. So Lane Thomas would address a lot of those different concerns, and I'm sure he would take a lot of the everyday reps in left field for Dalton Varsho until he starts to find some sort of rhythm in the batter's box. But I'm just wondering what the price would be. He is a controllable asset as well. He is someone that's not that doesn't have too much mileage on him, so he could help your team in years to come as well, not just this year. So non-rentals at the deadline are a lot more expensive than rental pieces, and if the price is right, I'd definitely take a flyer on Lane Thomas. He is someone that could help out this Blue Jays lineup. But I feel like the Washington Nationals are going to try to get a king's ransom, and I would not be willing to give that up.
And not only is it more expensive at the trade deadline for non-rentals, that's something that Ross Atkins has shown the willingness to go for in the past are guys with control, and it's kind of more of a Ross Atkins type of player. You think about all the guys that we've gotten, Mitch White, Ross Stripling before, and more there. But looking at his stats this year, like you said, he's a unique outfielder in the perspective of he doesn't get great jumps, but he has a great arm, kind of similar to Lourdes Gurriel Jr. So he's not a very good defender, but he can throw guys out very, very fast, and his baseball savant page is pretty average, but like you said, he's mashed lefties. He's hit very well this year. He's 27 years old. He has some control. So, like you said, a guy that I would love to see the Blue Jays get. However, I don't think it puts them over the top. So I wouldn't want to give up some top prospects necessarily, being like the top 3 or 4. But I mean, if we can get him for a package of mid to high, not decent prospects is kind of where I'm getting at here. Because he has control, I think it would be an interesting decision there, especially because the Washington Nationals should be selling, and we need someone who can hit left-handed pitching, especially with Dalton Varsho struggles, which is kind of the key to the whole season, this trade deadline, is that if Varsho wasn't struggling or wasn't struggling as much as he is, we probably wouldn't be asking for a fourth outfielder.
But there's no depth on this team when it comes to the fourth outfielder position. Now, Whit Merrifield, he's been great, but he's your everyday second baseman, and that's what he should be going forward. I don't want to see him have to play left field because Dalton Varsho is struggling. I want him to get in a rhythm. I want him to be that everyday second baseman. I want him to be this leadoff hitter that he's been in the past couple of games because he seems to excel in that role, and that's the role that he's been in his entire career. So I want to see Whit Merrifield be the everyday second baseman. I want to see them get another insurance piece in that outfield because right now you have Dalton Varsho, you have Kevin Kiermaier, you have George Springer, and Whit Merrifield as your four outfielders. Obviously, Kevin Biggio can play in a pinch. Jordan Luplow is up with the club, but he hasn't produced much. So you need someone that's going to be productive, someone that you can trust out there, and give these guys a break every now and then as well. Because George Springer doesn't look like himself. I'm sure he could use a couple of off days. Same thing with Kiermaier and Varsho. So Luplo would definitely, not Luplo, Lane Thomas would definitely give some much needed relief to these guys. And he mashes. He mashes. It's that simple. They need a guy like that, whether it's him, whether it's Tommy Pham. They need to make a move for someone because it's just not enough what they have at the moment.
Yeah, the depth is not there at all. And I mean, it's there in the infield to a degree with, Espinal and Biggio. But again, it's not really the impact players, although Espinal had a great game today. But that doesn't really change the point that the season's been very disappointing and pretty horrible in general. So we need some more depth. Every World Series team has a really solid, fourth outfielder to give guys some rest to help so they're not burnt out in the playoffs. But let's go over a couple of trade packages here. And let's start with this one, which is Tommy Pham. Now, this is from a Blue Jays reporter. I don't know the exact one, or sorry, Blue Jays writer. And we're going to kind of disagree with the package here that we think it's going to take to get this. Let's just start with highlighting this one, because this one's the less egregious one of the two. But it's Tommy Pham for infield prospect, Otto Lopez, and Irv Carter. The holes filled is obviously what we just said. It's kind of an alternative to Lane Thomas that should be and will be cheaper. Pham is going to cost a whole lot to pry away from the sinking New York Mets. Peter, what are your thoughts on this potential trade? And obviously Tommy Pham, we spoke about before, is very, very good, but I think it takes, despite him being a 35-year-old expiring, a bit more than Otto Lopez and Irv Carter, two kind of non-prospects for us this year.
Yeah, man, and the Mets have shown the willingness to part ways with a lot of these expiring deals, but for the right price. And look at the Max Scherzer trade from today. They got a couple of top 50 prospects in the sport, not just in the Rangers farm system, in exchange for a 38-year-old Max Scherzer who has a 4 ERA, who's not having a great year. So they will hold on to these guys if they do not get the right package. It's going to take a lot more than an underperforming Otto Lopez. And who was the other name
Irv
in
Carter.
that trade pack? Irv Carter. I haven't even heard of any Irv Carter updates in the past 3 years, and that's probably a bad thing, because he was a pretty decent selection for the Toronto Blue Jays, and he just hasn't panned out yet thus far in his career. So it would take a lot more than that. Probably one of your top 10 prospects, because Pham is a rental. He is someone that's having a good year, and he's kind of an uncertain commodity past this season. So you don't have to worry about that because he's only here for 1 year. So the Jays would have to part ways a little bit more to get Tommy Pham, in my opinion. Probably, would I do it? Probably, if it's a top 10 prospect. If it's a top 5 prospect, definitely not. But definitely going to have to be more than Otto Lopez package.
Yeah, and then quick looking at this Ben Nicholson, or the Shai Davidi little update as well. He said the likeliest path to complement a right-handed bat and additional relief for him. They've also tweeted to clubs that they're open to more, and this kind of segues into this absolutely preposterous and ridiculous trade, which is Padres second baseman Ha-Seong Kim for our number 9, 11, and 19 prospect, and so many reasons why this is horrible, but the best infield the Blue Jays have employed recently featured two shortstops at the middle with Marcus Semien, so why not reboot that situation? It would take way more than this to get one of the best players in baseball, one of the best infielders in baseball to the Blue Jays. Obviously, the Padres are selling, but I can assure you, I think he has 5 WAR this year, leading the MLB, or close to leading MLB, obviously Ohtani, but he's a phenomenal player. The Jays would do this trade in a heartbeat. Any team would do this trade in a heartbeat. It would take to get Ha-Seong Kim, I would assume Ricky Tiedemann, you'd think at least, or someone close, maybe not him,
maybe
someone close. Way more than this is kind of my point. So I disagree with the whole package, but I would love Ha-Seong Kim, and who knows, maybe let's just get wild with it at this point.
I mean, who wouldn't love Ha-Seong Kim on their team? But on a team with Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Fernando Tatis, and Juan Soto, who's the leadoff hitter? It's Ha-Seong Kim. So does that tell you a little bit about
He's
him
unreal.
as a player? He's phenomenal. He's great defensively. He can play second base, shortstop, and third base at an elite level. And you're not going to get him for your number 9 prospect. I'm sorry to break it to you. Whoever that Blue Jays writer is, you gotta get under that rock that you're living under, because Ha-Seong Kim is worth at least a couple of top 5 prospects. He's controllable. He's phenomenal as a player, and one of the most solid MLB players that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah,
Seriously.
very, very underrated as a player, and he was underrated here. And again, probably wouldn't take Ricky Tiedemann. Maybe it would, but it would take like you said, 2 top 5 prospects plus these 3 prospects, and I think that's what it would take to get that done. But I mean, it makes sense if he's available. Then if you're the Blue Jays, kind of shores up your shortstop, put him in shortstop, Bo at second. But these are getting a bit, ridiculous. The Tommy Pham one, I think, is one that the Blue Jays can kind of get behind there. And again, it'll take a bit more than this, but the trade deadline's starting to heat up, and the Jays are also heating up. They've been going insane, and we're going to be having multiple uploads for you, like we've been promising this whole week, because different stuff is dropping every day, and I suspect that the Blue Jays will make a trade over the next couple of days, this weekend maybe. If not, then definitely on Tuesday. But stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully the Jays can sweep the Angels tomorrow. Cheers.
Thanks.